Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Agent's Edge. My name is Ryan Palomini. Today we're going to talk about what RMDs are and why you need to pay attention to them. Now listen, when I first started in the annuity space, I was trying to figure out what the heck an annuity was, let alone tax planning, things of that nature. But as I've evolved and as we've kind of grown as a firm, being a tax-first firm, what I mean by that is every single plan we build is built on the foundation of taxes. And one of the reasons why we have the ability to work with such high net worth individuals now, and I'm talking about multi-million-dollar clients, I'm not talking about like two, three, I'm talking about multi-million-dollar clients, is because we take the tax-first approach. And I'm going to give you a secret that no one talks about in our industry. It is required minimum distributions. I know that because I compete with every one of you, and I compete with all the financial advisors, and it's the easiest way to create space between me and the competition by talking about things no one else is talking about. Why? Because for most people, a required minimum distribution is so far into the future that people don't even think about them. But the problem is, at our firm, we call it being proactive versus reactive. You can steal that from me, that's okay. Proactive versus reactive. What that means is being proactive is talking about things that no one else is going to talk about and planning for them now, even though it may not be here for 15 years. What do I mean by that? What is a required minimum distribution, or RMDs? An RMD is when the IRS tells you based on a certain age. So for most people, it's going to be 73 or 75 at this point based on the year they were born. Now, what the IRS does is they look at all of your qualified assets, and qualified money is things like 401ks, traditional IRAs, traditional 403bs, traditional 457s, on and on, and traditional TSPs. Anything that's a traditional IRA classification, pre-tax money, meaning it has not yet been taxed, is going to fall under the required minimum distribution. So once again, a required minimum distribution is when the IRS looks at all your traditional assets, they add it all up, and they tell you how much you need to be taking out. Because why? They want their tax dollars. So if I've got someone that's got $1 million, and this is roughly, don't take this, you go use an RMD calculator, it's going to be roughly about 40,000, give or take, plus or minus, depending on the age, plus minus, is what they're going to be forced to take out, even if they don't need the money. Now, think about for a second all the ways that can affect your client. Well, let's say that what if this client has $1 million and they have good income, they have, they only need $10,000 a year, right? So they've got their pension, they have Social Security, and they're taking $10K a year from this million. Number one, they're never going to run out of money because, for the love of God, 10,000 of $1 million a year, they're never going to run out of money. The other issue is this million's going to keep growing and growing if they're only taking 10,000 a year out, right? So that makes the RMD a bigger problem because the higher this million goes, the bigger this number is going to be. So again, think about a situation where your client needs $10,000 a year, and then all of a sudden the IRS forces them to take 40. That's $30,000 a year, 30 grand a year more now that they're going to be forced to take and pay taxes on. Just take a moment. If you know nothing about annuities or taxes, that's fine. Think logically for a second. What would that extra $30,000 a year in somebody's income potentially do to their tax bracket? What if this person right here is humming along in a 12% federal tax bracket, but they're kind of on the edge because at 12% you got a decent amount of income that you can make before you go to a 22. Okay, what if this 30,000 extra that they are forced to take is the difference between being in a 12 and being in a 22% tax bracket? Could you see why some people may be concerned with that? Because the problem is, if you are not proactive and you are reactive, you're not going to have the time to fix this. Because if you come to me at age 70 and your RMDs are 73, I got 3 years to come up with a strategy to reduce those RMDs. Now, I'm not going to get into that now. That's part of the academy that we built. It's in there. That's a very long conversation. But think about for a second, what could you do to help? I'm going to give you 2 strategies that you can use. Very simply put. Number 1, Roth conversions. Now, this Roth conversion is probably going to scare the hell out of some of you. Because if you don't know tax planning, that could be a scary thing. Okay? So what I would do if you're going to talk about Roth conversions, number 1, you got to understand how they work. Number 2, partner with somebody that understands it. Number 3, have a good CPA that's on your team. Because this is where things can go wrong. But if this person that has $1 million is 60 years old, and their RMD is not until 75, they have 15 years before they have to worry about RMDs. Now, some people go, well, then I'm not going to worry about it till later. No. The younger, the better, because that means you have 15 years of doing things like Roth conversion. So if you've got $1 million you have to convert to a Roth, you don't have to do it all in 5 years. You have 15 years to do that, which means that you can convert and keep their tax bracket in the same or in that same 12% tax bracket. But what do you do for them long term? You allow them, we know what the taxes are going to be 15 years from now, right? But we're being proactive. So you can allow them to eliminate that required minimum distribution, or at least lower it or cut it in half. But by doing Roth conversions allows your client to minimize the RMDs, because Roth accounts are not subject to RMDs. Now, I'm talking about 2024 here, right? So disclaimer, things could change. So always know the tax laws and the rules around it. But as of right now, that's not the case. So that's number 1. Number 2, how else can you reduce somebody's RMDs? Well, you could use an income annuity to do it. Well, how would you do that? By putting a certain amount of this million into an income annuity, turning the income on, and letting that income start pass to them and giving them some income. That $10,000 they need anyways, great, turn it into a revenue stream for them, because in an income annuity, most of the time, when you turn the income on, the annuity is going to run out of money at a certain point. Usually break even's like, 18 to 20 years, give or take. But if you took 400,000 of the million, put into an income annuity, and by 75 years old, they're still receiving that income for life. They will always receive that income forever, but their account balance may be 0 at that time. But what did that do? That eliminated 400,000 out of the million that's going to be looked at for RMD purposes. So you've eliminated a portion of what their RMD issues are going to be. But you go, Ryan, they still have 600 grand, and it may still grow. You're right. That's why sometimes you need a combination strategy of the annuity, of Roth conversions. This is more high-level stuff I'm talking about. But I need you to understand the basics, because your job is just to create space. It's to create space between you and the competition. Let me ask you, Mr. So-and-so, when was the last time your financial advisor went through and built out an RMD strategy? Or even better, what is your financial advisor's strategy for reducing your RMDs to 75? You get a deer in the headlight look, like, what are you talking about? No, it's a legitimate question. I need an answer to it, right? Because, we haven't talked about that. Okay, do you understand what happens if you don't? I'm telling you of $1 million at 60. Do you understand what the compounding of $1 million over the next 15 years? That's going to be $2.2 or $2.5 million, which means this RMD is now 80 grand. What is your advisor's strategy for eliminating that problem from happening? See, simple stuff. You don't have to know all tax laws, tax rules. You just need to know how to have this conversation, because these type of conversations is what's going to separate you from everybody else. Listen, I hope this was helpful for you. RMDs, required minimum distributions, how to use them, what they are, and a couple simple strategies for eliminating them. I hope it's been helpful for you. Listen, drop some comments below. Let me know if this was helpful. Hit that subscribe button. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Agent's Edge. Today we're going to talk about how to use different types of annuities to build a portfolio for your client. Now remember, one of the keys to this is making sure that you understand things like suitability, so you know what the limit is on what you can do and what you can put into different types of annuities. Because again, the goal is to help your client be very well diversified in the way that they structure their money. You need to have liquidity, you need to have safe growth, income, so on and so forth. So I can tell you, when we do case design work, the first thing that we're always going to look at is the income bucket, right? For me, it's so important because look, just about 16% of Americans have a pension. What I love and what I'm so passionate about the annuity space is we get the opportunity to help people create private pensions for themselves. Look, don't get me wrong, an annuity has multiple functions, right? Growth, income, guaranteed growth on like MYGAs, which we're going to talk about. But the reality is, most people you're going to meet truly need income. And that's what annuities are. They do phenomenally well. They are a way to make an exchange. You're exchanging a lump sum for an income for the rest of your life if you go the income route. Now, when we do case design, and if you go and watch my video on the 3-bucket strategy, you'll understand kind of the mind frame around how we do what we do and the emphasis on income. So let me give you an example. Let's say you go and you do a seminar and you have a client that comes in and they're looking for Social Security advice. Now, we know that about 3/4 of the population, when they turn on Social Security, number one is either going to be their only fixed income source, and number two is most likely going to be their largest fixed income source, right? So what if you have a client that comes to see you and their Social Security is $2,500 a month, but their expenses are $4,500 a month? Well, clearly they have a $2,000 a month income gap. So how do you fix that? And how do you help people solve that problem? It's by using one type of annuity called an income annuity. And there's a lot of different companies. This is not a promotion for any one specific carrier because everybody's different. Everybody's got their own niches, so on and so forth. But what I can tell you is it's pretty easy to narrow it down to like the top 3 or 4. And what I like to do is let clients know, like, hey, these are the top 3. I can tell you which one I like better, why I would like it that way. But the reality is people like options. Now, again, not too many options. Can you confuse people? But we need to fill this bucket called income. So if I've got a client that has $600,000, what I need to do is figure out what the client needs and the best way to diversify the $600,000. Let me give you an example of something that cracks me up. I see it every single day. I have the privilege now of working with really high net worth individuals. And what always cracks me up is when they come in like, my portfolio is well diversified. All right, let's be clear. There's a difference between a well diversified portfolio and having your money work for you to achieve certain things. What do I mean by that? You could have $600,000 in equities and bonds and cash and all that. That's great. But what part of that money have you earmarked to create income forever? Well, I could do 4% of my $600,000 and in theory, I should never run out. Look, it doesn't work that way. Right? The 4% rule is a bunch of BS. Because if you're doing the 4% rule, right, and let's say that you're taking out, I'm making up a number. Let's say you're taking out $30,000 a year. You're taking out 4. If your money is being managed, you have a 1% management fee on average, right? That's 5% per year that has to come out. Well, it's pretty simple to understand that the S&P 500 over a 10-year period returns anywhere from 8 to 10%. If you have to make 5 to break even, let's be real, you are not in a portfolio that is like incredibly least aggressive. You have to have some money. It's not a conservative portfolio. You cannot be in an ultra conservative portfolio and expect 5% return year after year, which means that you have to take some risk. Which means what? That $30,000 a year you need, your 4% rule, which just turned into 5 with fees, right? You have to take risk. What if the market is down 20 and you lost 20% that year, but you still have to take out 5, right? Now you're negative 25 that year. My question to you is based on your 4% rule. It's 5% now. negative 25, how many years can you sustain before you run out of money? That's a different way of looking at things. That's where the diversified portfolio doesn't work all the time, right? So what I want to know is if we have an income gap of $2,500 per month, we need to take this $600,000 and start working backwards using an income annuity to cover that. Now, some of you are going to fight me and say, well, you could do with a growth annuity, you could just take out 10%. Like, look, different conversation, different day. This is Basics 101. I just understanding how these different types of annuities work and how you could use them based on what your strategy is. So I'm going to make up a number here. Let's say that out of this 600,000, we need 250,000 of it to produce 2,500. Now I know that's probably not going to produce 25. I'm just making up numbers here because it depends on how long you have to let this grow, and the longer it grows, it gets a roll-up rate on a guaranteed basis. It gets a bonus. So hypothetically here, people, we're working on this, right? So let's say that now this income gap was covered by $250,000. All right, pretty simple, right? We know that we have some money left over out of this, but it took $250,000. This is different than a diversified portfolio. This is you now utilizing dollars to achieve something. This something is using it to cover your income, right? So what does that mean? That means that out of this, we still have $350,000 left. Now this is where we start diversifying more. So a lot of the times, what I like to do is I like to find people who have money in CDs, money in bonds, money in things like money market accounts, right? All the different types of things where people try to get really conservative and maybe kind of get a return on their money for. It's money that's not really needed because look, if I can get the income covered and still have $350,000, the reality is I can lose some of this and it doesn't affect my retirement overall, because I don't want to lose any of it. But if I do, if I lost $100,000, I know my income is never going to stop ever. That puts people at ease, right? So then I figure out, okay, what do we want for safety? What do we want for growth? Now, at our firm, we run a risk assessment on everybody. We do assets under management. We have to run it for compliance reasons. So we run a risk. We figure out, okay, based on your risk score, how much risk are you willing to take, right? And that's where we start looking at the next two pieces to this puzzle, the growth and the safety bucket. Because we may find out that if, God forbid, I lost, $200,000, it would suck, but I would still be able to proceed with life. My income is covered. I'll have a little bit extra money. Maybe I'm going to work a part-time job, whatever the situation may be. So then we're going to figure out, okay, how much are we willing to put into the growth annuity, into the growth portion. Now, if you are securities licensed, this is probably where you're going to put the majority of that money. I'm not saying you can't use a growth annuity to do this. You can. But you're starting to run into suitability issues if this $600,000 is all they have. Because now you're taking, almost all their money and sticking it into, because if we're going to take $250K and put it into growth, maybe it's a little bit less. Maybe you do $100,000 into a growth annuity. Point is as you start diversifying, you got to understand how these annuities work and what the limit is going to be for suitability and things of that nature. But just think about this as you're working with your clients in using money to do certain things. So because we do assets under management, this growth account is typically our AUM account. Now, what about the other, right? This is $500,000. What about this other $100,000 that they just don't want to risk? We know that I got $200,000, $100,000, I got $350,000 of my money safe as sound. I'm okay if this 250 goes to 150 because I can still survive, right? Because I have this $100,000 here, I've got this. So what would you do here? Well, maybe this could be a growth annuity. I like shorter durations for this because if I want this to be my kind of safe money and I want to be able to, if I need to access it, we typically like doing 5-year, 7-year surrender charges. I'm not going to probably stick too many people in 10-year here. The other thing that we like to do is, let's say that we found that in my client's portfolio, they have, like I said, a CD, or they have money market accounts. and maybe they're getting 2 to 3% interest. Well, what I like to do is I'll take this money and I'll put it into what's called a MYGA, a multi-year guarantee annuity. Multi-year guarantee annuity, a MYGA. And what that means is you can do anything from 1 to 5, to 7-year durations. And what you're doing is kind of a CD on steroid, right? It allows you to be able to take this money and get a guaranteed interest rate. I do a lot of 3-year MYGAs because some of the 3 years are anywhere between 5.5 up to 6.5 interest, guaranteed. And people like the guarantee portion of it because they know if I drop in 100 grand in 3 years, my 100 grand is going to turn into 130,000. I'm making up numbers. It's going to turn into $130,000 guaranteed. Cool. What's the other option with that? Well, every 3 years we get to maybe roll that into something different. Maybe there's something that's giving a better return. So a new MYGA that we're going to choose. Or maybe life has changed and they want to just kind of tack it up for a long-term growth annuity because they're going to give it to their kids. Or maybe this becomes a Roth conversion play. Whatever the situation is, understanding how different types of annuities work play a big role in how you structure this for your clients. Now, I'm a firm believer that if you're watching this and you truly are taking this business seriously, you need to be in the assets under management securities world. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I got to tell you, from a compliance perspective, it allows you to be a fiduciary, number one. Number two, if you don't, I've think it's pretty safe to say you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity to land a complete client, and you're going to battle more people with other financial advisors than you would if you could just scoop up all the money and diversify it and use money to perform certain things. Not this is in stocks, this is in bonds, this is in municipal bonds. Whatever. That's not achieving the ultimate goal to diversify people the right way, to earmark money to perform certain things. So again, recap. I like income annuities. I'm a big income annuity producer. This growth pot over here could be a growth annuity depending on how much goes in there. A lot of people who just like their safe money with just a growth guarantee. I'm a big MYGA fan, multi-year guarantee annuity. Now listen, when I first started, I didn't really know the MYGA game. I didn't really understand it. I was so new that I kind of went deep on one thing. But as you evolve in this business and you're going to become an elite producer, you got to understand how certain things work and how and where they fit in. So again, a lot more on this in the future. Hope this has been helpful for you. Listen, if this was helpful, hit the subscribe button for me. Share this to somebody that needs to see it. And we love comments, so let us know what you thought. We'll see you on the next episode.